Filmmakers, it's time to use Soldo. Soldo is a payment solution that replaces petty cash given to employees and production assistants when in prep, on set, or in post-production. Soldo is a multi-user expense account that helps you control business spending. You can give Soldo cards to some or every employee, to entire teams or even contractors instantly. Transfer funds to all card holders. And you can use Soldo for free for 3 months with the code FILMMAKERSPOD. Soldo.com. Listen for more info in today's episode of the Filmmakers Podcast.
The Podfix Network.
Hello and welcome to the Filmmakers Podcast.
This is a podcast where we talk
Filmmaking!
from indie films to studio films
And everything in between.
and how to get them made, how to make them, and how to not try to...
How to try not to fuck up the intro, Dom Memoir.
Exactly. Exactly. I did the intro fine last time,
You did.
but somebody wasn't recording.
I wasn't, and Dom's really upset with me because
Yeah.
he thought he was really funny.
And Giles is under a duvet as well, just to set the scene.
I am under a duvet in Ipswich, just so you know, in an echoey room, so I've gone under a duvet. It's still quite echoey.
You can't see me, but I'm visibly annoyed at the last 5 minutes fun not being recorded.
Today on the show, we are with the Duke filmmakers, producer Nicky Bentham, and screenwriters Richard Bean and Clive Coleman.
Although technically we weren't with them because what happened, Giles?
We weren't. So I couldn't make the actual recording of this because I was making films myself. But I did go to the screening with Dom of The Duke, which is out now, starring Helen Mirren and Jim Broadbent.
And we did have a lovely time there, to be fair. We had an interesting butler scenario. So I ordered a fresh mint tea for 2.
At the screening, by the way. I wasn't there yet.
Yep. A treat for Giles. I thought, why not? I'll sell my kidney and get a fresh mint tea at the Soho Hotel. And the guy sort of was being very mannerly and said, no, follow me. And I was like, well, I'm in the screening room. He's like, no problem. So into a packed room full of very serious reporters, in waltzed...
You with your own butler walking behind
me
you.
and my He's like, and I got to say, just set it down there, please. Silverware and everything. It was a magnificent thing, and it almost made it worthwhile when Giles suddenly threw on to me that I'd be recording my second solo outing as a host on the Filmmakers Podcast.
Because the first one was with Alice Eve, yeah, and now here's your second one.
Yeah, slightly less pressure, but slightly longer episodes. So maybe it evens out. Who knows?
Maybe it does. Yeah, that was funny because when I arrived in the cinema, and it's, by the way, so you know, to set the scene, if you ever go to one of these press junkets, these press screenings, it's very quiet. It's not like you go to normal cinema and people are eating popcorn and chatting away and on their phones. It's like silence. You walk in and no one's talking. What was the one where we went to and we just giggled? Serrano, wasn't it?
Oh,
we were
yes.
just at the front because it was so quiet. And we just like children at the front, like giggling idiots.
Yeah.
But the Duke, we did get to see it in the cinema screening, and Dom kept pouring me green tea throughout, and I actually thoroughly enjoyed it, so thank you.
Yeah, it was very nice. It was a wonderful experience, and
it was such a lovely date I had with you.
Yes, yeah. Now joining me is my co-host,
which is me, Giles Alderson. Yeah. I'm the co-host today. Yay! I'm not the co-host because I'm just doing the intros.
Oh yeah, you're the intro co-host. that's like another level down.
Knocked down even more of a peg.
Next you'll be making short films like Tobias. Just for anyone that hasn't been following the other episodes, Giles has an ongoing joke at Tobias for his short filmmaking, so we have nothing against short films. Maybe Giles does.
Nothing at all, by the way. No, I do not. I love people who make sure that's how I started. But yeah, he's going to cut that anyway.
You better not. Don't cut it, Tobias.
What did you talk about, Dom, on your solo interviews? Because it was 3 people, 2 screenwriters and the producer, Nicky Bentham, who, by the way, has produced a load of short films.
But Giles won't be watching those.
The Silent Storm she produced, which is starring Damian Lewis, You Can Tutu, and The Duke, and also her upcoming film Who Killed the KLF. And also the screenwriters, they are Richard Bean and Clive Coleman, and they are massive theatre writers. And I was gutted I couldn't do this interview with Dom because I'm a big fan of their work. What did you talk about? What can our audience learn from your chat with Nicky? Because they better learn something, otherwise you're going to be relegated back to intro co-host.
I spoke to her about working with and attaching actors like Jim Broadbent and Helen Mirren. I spoke to her about developing an existing story into a script, producing a big film like this one, and Nicky's journey into producing.
There you go. So it sounds like you will learn something, because Dom seems to be asking the right questions there. Let's see.
On first impressions, you might get that idea.
Let's see. Let us know. Tweet us at FilmmakersPod. Speaking of which, you can find us there or on Instagram as well, the Filmmakers Podcast. Do come follow us. Do follow the wrap-up. We do the wrap-up every Sunday, and it's basically the weekly news, the latest happenings in the indie filmmaking world. If there's a studio setting up new funds for filmmakers, we put it all in the wrap-up.
If Giles has a new film out.
Yeah, that will be in there. Believe me. Speaking of which, A Stranger in Our Bed will be out later this year. But that won't be in the wrap-up yet. Oh, I'm delivering Wolves of War as well at the moment, doing all the final tweaks right now on Wolves of War, baby.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. I've just finished delivering When the Screaming Starts for sales and distribution.
When the Screaming Starts did so well at Fright Fest, I loved it. Absolutely brilliant. We'll have to get Connor on the podcast when that comes out as well, won't we, the director of that?
Oh yes. Not to be confused with Con Air, although often I do call him Con Air.
You're very punny. Speaking of directors, the director of The Duke, of which this podcast is about, and like I say, The Duke is out in cinemas now. I loved it. I thought it was really brilliant. The director is Roger Michel, who sadly died late last year, so he didn't get to see the release of this movie. But he's directed such incredible films as Notting Hill, Venus, which I love that movie, Enduring Love, and the upcoming Elizabeth documentary as well, all about Queen Elizabeth.
We'd certainly like to express our condolences, and I think this is a fantastic, heartfelt film to remember him by.
Dom, how would you describe The Duke?
I'd say it's a dramatic and comedic, but utterly true telling of a fascinating real story about a family up north who went through an incredible journey. And I won't say any more to spoil it.
Then, without further ado, let's get to it. Dom Lenoir's second solo outing as co-host. As solo host. It is Dom Lenoir chatting to the wonderful and lovely and talented producer, Nicky Bentham.
Welcome to the Filmmakers Podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to be chatting. We managed to see the film last week, and it was incredibly funny, very touching, very human, and more impressive that it's based on a true story. So how are you doing? How's all the release stuff going for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's going really well. And I guess more than anything, it's just so nice to finally be sharing it with audiences, because obviously our release has been a little bit delayed due to COVID. And I think when you make a film that's all about community and about people kind of coming together for the greater good, it's, and also that's got, so many laughs in it. All you really want is to kind of sit down with a packed out cinema and enjoy it. So yeah. It's been a long time coming, but it's really great that we've finally made it to this moment.
Yeah, we managed to see it in the Soho Hotel. And it was such a nice experience just to be surrounded by people, and it is that kind of film where it's great to sort of come together and laugh together and enjoy that kind of humanity. So how did COVID affect things? Like did you shoot through COVID, or was it before?
No, we actually finished shooting a couple of weeks before the first lockdown. So it was end of February 2020. We finished. We wrapped. And, I mean, I think back to that moment and that time, we just had no idea what was around the corner, of course. I remember when we were on the shoot, in fact, we were up in Leeds and Bradford in our kind of set world, very focused on the shooting. And the VFX supervisor kind of came up from London for a few days and was just talking about this virus from China. And none of us had actually even been reading the paper. We were sort of so busy and we were like, what are you talking about? So that was, I guess, kind of another world. But we wrapped the shoot and then edited it remotely through the lockdown, and were meant to release later that year. And we did manage to get to Venice for the world premiere. But our US premiere at Telluride was delayed, and then obviously our UK release has been delayed until now.
And did you have to do any pickups, or was it all kind of straightforward based on?
No, fortunately we didn't have to do any pickups, and that's really down to the sort of amazing preparation and decisiveness of Roger Michel, who was always very, very clear about his choices of coverage, and he was editing the film in his head as we were shooting. Yeah, so I think we were very lucky that we didn't need to do that. And he has a really he had a really loyal team of his cinematographer and editor that they had a real shorthand with. So
well, that's a big tick for both of you then. I mean, I remember when COVID was first being mentioned, I was in LA, and it was just some of the flights from China were being sort of siphoned off, and they're like, oh, COVID. And it was just sort of an anecdote. And then, a week later, flying back, and it's, full lockdown, and it suddenly becomes such a serious thing. And it's certainly a big thing to contend with when you're in a production, but it's amazing you managed to get the shooting out the way. So that's a big plus. Going back to the start of the project, how did it all begin for you?
So the beginning for me was back in 2013. I got an email out of the blue from a gentleman called Christopher Bunton, who told me that he had this incredible story in his family, and he just sort of attached a paragraph synopsis of the main details of it, and said, I think this could be a movie. What do you think? And it was a brilliant paragraph. I mean, it was such a fascinating, funny, and incredible story. And I thought, well, that sounds great, but I mean, obviously that can't be true. He must be sort of embellishing something somewhere. So I did a bit of research, and it actually all checked out. And I was just amazed that this was a true story that people didn't really know about, that had kind of been sort of brushed under the carpet by the authorities at the time. And then the family had chosen not to talk about it publicly either. So it was just a real sort of hidden gem. So I jumped on it straight away, and through various conversations with the Bunton family and a few trips up and down to Newcastle, managed to arrange with them that I would work with them to bring it to the screen.
I mean, it is quite a remarkable story. And I remember when I was, I sort of went into the screening blind, because I like to do that sometimes and be surprised. And I was thinking, this is just, is this possible? Like some of the things that happened are so amazing and impressive, especially considering the sort of the down to earth nature of the family and this huge thing that they managed to pull off. And I think that's pretty amazing. So
it's just an irresistible story, really.
So how did that development process go, from initially chatting to the family, and then did they sort of get involved in the treatment stage, or how did that process work?
No, I mean, what actually happened was that Chris Bunton had in fact written a script based on the story, and he works in tech in New York. So I think the fact that he sat down and actually wrote a script from beginning to end is completely remarkable. So hats off to him for doing that. But what I said to him from the very beginning is that I felt like this project, was going to need some scale and a lot of expertise, and that if he was really serious about doing this, then I think we needed to sort of put his script to one side and find professional writers to, not just because, obviously we want the best writing possible, but also I think it's very difficult, even for a professional writer, it's very difficult to write about their own family and their own story.
Because of objectivity, I suppose, yeah. Yeah,
exactly. And so I said to Chris, I think it's really important that we find someone that can actually, stand back and look at this whole story clear-eyed and then put together the script. And so once I had sort of had the rights and done the deal with the family, I then talked to Pathé about it, because it felt like it was very much within their wheelhouse of British true stories, feel good, uplifting, underdog tale. And so I took it. Really, it was the first call that I made, and they were similarly bowled over by the story, and so came on board to develop it with me from that point on. And we brought on Richard Bean and Clive Coleman to write the script, who just felt like an absolutely perfect pair for it as well, because both of them have a background writing comedy and for theatre. Richard Bean sort of best known for One Man, Two Governors, his play. Clive is a former barrister who also used to be the BBC's legal correspondent. And because we had such an enormous archive of source material to get through in the research and development stage, we had court transcripts, we had Kempton's memoirs, we had Kempton's plays, we had newspaper articles, and also the National Archives had thousands and thousands of pages of all the kind of the legal paperwork and the police reports and the ransom notes, and just so much. So it felt like actually having Richard and Clive, both of them with their sort of slightly different experience and slightly different perspectives kind of come together to work on it was absolutely perfect.
And how did you, in terms of what was the actual story and what was added maybe from the development process with Pathé and yourself and the director, and how closely did you stick to things? What did you sort of adapt? And
to be honest, there's very little that's added. I think the biggest task was what we had to take away, because in actual fact, the story took place over a period of about 4 or 5 years. That the painting was actually hidden in the cupboard for 4 years. Right. And so we felt like we needed to condense the timeline a bit. And also, there were some things that happened in real life that we just thought was so absurd that they were too unbelievable to even, it was just too much. And so we did really have to simplify and streamline things, just to kind of keep it moving and keep the humor and the pace. And there were just so many twists and turns in the real story that, we probably could have made an epic series of it all, but we wanted to condense it. So I think what you see as the script, I guess it's easy to think that, oh, well, that's sort of what happened and the writers just had to kind of transpose. But actually the process of navigating, all the details of the true story and then pulling out, all of the best bits that are both from the side of the legal authorities, establishment side, as well as the family drama and what they were going through and dealing with their own grief and their own challenges. Was really it was a heroic effort on behalf of the writers, I have to say.
Yeah. And how did the casting and getting the director on board, was that down to you, or was it how did that process work?
Really, from the get-go, we really had Jim Broadbent in mind to play Kempton Bunton. And obviously you've seen the film now, so you've probably seen a photo of the real Kempton.
It's hard to imagine anyone else actually.
And know a bit about his character. So I guess you can kind of see how Jim is just such perfect casting. And it's always a little bit scary when you are developing a project and, you know, trying to imagine how it's going to look and what the casting might be like. And your casting list has one person on it, because obviously that's a very narrow target. But as we were developing the script and talking to, remember I was talking to a few agents, and as we were looking for a director, and one way or another, Jim caught wind of the project and knew that we had actually, that we had sort of had him in mind. And so he was very interested. And then we went to Roger Michelle, who actually, I mean, Roger and Jim kind of share an talent agency. So we went to Roger, and when he came on board, he said, look, I'll do it if Jim does it. And Jim said, I'll do it if Roger does it. So
amazing.
So they came together as a brilliant pair. The next task was to find Dorothy Bunton, and we had thought that Helen would be spectacular, but obviously it's not the sort of role we're used to seeing her in. We're so used to seeing her in an amazing gown, often with a crown on her head or something, and sort of to conceive of her as a domestic cleaner from Newcastle, no makeup, very kind of, you know, pedestrian working class woman was a leap, and we didn't know if she'd be interested in it, but she just responded to the script immediately and loved the writing and really understood the depths of this character. And I think that for me, it was really, really important that we had a really strong, fierce actor in that role as Dorothy Bunton, because of course it is primarily Kempton's story, but the whole family was, you know, glued together, and she was really the backbone of the whole family and the whole story. I mean, none of this would have happened without Dorothy. And I think that perhaps the sort of the history books and the newspaper articles and the official reports would have forgotten Dorothy, and what a strong matriarch and an important part she had.
Yeah, no, I mean she is a huge part of the film, and she is a real driving force on screen. I think it was a real inspired casting choice, and I think it's a great example that, you know, if you're going for someone really different for the role, sometimes it can be very appealing to them because it's something they haven't done, and it's not always the case that they'll want to.
Exactly. And she was completely game, like just up for it all. And so, you know, and then bringing Jim and Helen together, they've not actually worked together before, so it was just a huge honor to watch them do their thing.
So just to wrap up, could you quickly tell us a very short redacted version of what the film's about and when we can watch it, please?
Sure. The film, The Duke, is about the UK's first art heist, which was a theft from the National Gallery of the Duke of Wellington portrait by Goya. In 1961, it disappeared from the National Gallery. It turned up in the wardrobe of a Geordie bus driver named Kempton Bunton, who held the painting to ransom for the greater good. And it's a hugely warm and witty, uplifting tale that you will not believe is true, but is 100% the real deal. And it's in UK cinemas from the 25th of February. So I really hope that everyone gets along to the cinemas to finally enjoy it as a communal experience, because it's very much about community and looking out for each other and how one person can really make a difference.
Will the defendant please stand? Kempton Bunton, you were charged that on the 21st of March 1961, you stole from the National Gallery a priceless portrait of the Duke of Wellington by Francisco José de Goya.
Not very good, is it?
We're convinced that the Goya has been stolen by a highly professional international criminal gang.
Mind your boomers!
Almost certainly a trained commando.
You all right? Bitter biscuit. One problem.
What's that?
Your mother. I can explain.
I'm shaken.
It's the shock.
Shock, yes, I'm shocked. There's a stolen masterpiece in my wardrobe.
What's he actually asking for? £140,000. For what? Charity. Good grief.
I'm living with a madman.
I'm tackling social injustice. I'm like Robin Hood.
You're an idiot.
The taxpayer paid for that painting. They could have given thousands to war widows and pensioners. It's for the greater good of mankind.
Mankind? What about your own kind? How long will you get?
I don't know. 10 years.
You could have told me. We could have dealt with it together.
You married young.
I had to marry.
Had to marry.
It was love.
He is not a thief. He borrowed your Goya to do a bit of good in this world. You campaign for pensioners and war veterans.
Every time someone gets cut off from the rest of us, this country becomes a foot shorter. All my life I've looked out for other people and got into trouble for it. But I had faith. Not in God, but in people.
How do you plead?
Not guilty.
Yes! For those unfamiliar with court proceedings, that was the plea, not the verdict.
Yeah, it's incredibly warm and it's very enjoyable, and I highly recommend you go and see it. Just before we go, just one piece of advice that you'd give your younger self if you were going back in time.
Oh, that's a good one. I mean, I think that it would be to kind of keep living in that I've always been so incredibly focused on work, but what I've realized as I've had kids and I've gotten older and I've found other interests is that it's actually all of those things that make my work more interesting and that I kind of put into the stories that I want to tell and the people that I want to work with.
Life feeds into everything.
Exactly. Don't forget to sort of smell the roses, I suppose.
Amazing. Well, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure, Nicky. And go and see the film.
Great. Thanks so much, Dom. Lovely to chat to you.
Lovely. Have a great day. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
As most of you know, this week's podcast is sponsored by Soldo. And as it happens, last week Tobias informed you all that he had spoken to Teddy the accountant who is using Soldo for his latest film. Have you got an update for us, Tobias?
Yeah, you can't believe what happened.
Wow.
It's incredible. He managed to attach Ryan Gosling to his film.
That's incredible.
Yes.
In a film called The Accountant. Hang on. Isn't there a film called The Accountant already starring Ben Affleck?
Yes, but Teddy's film is called Accountant. Only Accountant. Yeah.
Oh, so he took the off.
He took the off, yeah. So
Brilliant. So it totally works.
He's a smart guy.
He's a very smart guy. Speaking of him being smart, because he's using Soldo, as most of you know, but some of you don't, so I'll fill you in. Soldo combines smart company cards with a comprehensive management platform, which means you can empower your employees and departments to pay and control every penny with custom budgets. And you can get 3 months. I still got it wrong.
And you get 3 months for free using the promo code FILMMAKERSPOD.
That is amazing.
Did you read it, actually? The script?
Yes. I have notes. I'll give you them next week. For now, though, do go check out the link in the show notes for soldo.com. Right, let's get back to our lovely guest. So that was Nicky. Oh my gosh, Dom.
Wow, I'm pretending I just listened to it. I clearly didn't. We're still recording in the same intro section.
It was a great chat. Really, really good.
It was really good. And you did really well as solo host, Dom. Congratulations, you.
Thank you.
Next, you chatted to the screenwriters of The Duke, Richard Bean and Clive Coleman. Tell me about that.
We certainly duked it out. We discussed the process. We discussed the process of co-writing, putting together treatments, adapting a novel, and working across different mediums of writing and parallel career progression.
Ooh, that sounds like an intellectual chat.
It was.
Did you feel out your depth?
Not at all. Not at all. As an intellectual.
Screenwriters out there, you're going to learn from two absolute legends of the writing game, and the fact that they're moving massively into screenwriting now is huge. They've got other films coming out, and The Duke is... It's marvellous. It's marvellous. Let's get to Dom hosting again with the two fantastic screenwriters, Richard Bean and Clive Coleman. The Duke is out in cinemas. Do watch it.
Nice to meet you both. Welcome to the Filmmakers podcast. We watched the film last week. It was an absolute pleasure. How's the press tour been going for you guys so far and seeing it on the screen at last?
Massive relief.
Yeah, well, it's been a 2-year wait, hasn't it, really?
Yeah. Been in lockdown. That film has been in lockdown for nearly 2 years. So we're just thrilled that it's finally out.
Amazing. How did it all begin for you? Because it was based on a story, is that correct?
Yeah, we got a phone call from Pathé asking us to come for a meeting. I think they'd had a script. I think it was a script. Do you think it was a script, Clive, or was it a treatment or something?
They'd had so the history is that I think that Chris Bunton, who was Kempton's grandson, had written a script that hadn't, for whatever reason, wasn't right. And then another writer, I think, also wrote a script. We've never seen, obviously, either of these previous scripts for legal reasons, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But they obviously felt that they wanted to get some other writers to have a crack at it. And we were, well, in fact, they came to you, Richard, and we'd just written a play together, Young Marks, which was at that point literally just about to go on and open Sir Nicholas Hytner's new theatre, the Bridge Theatre.
Wow.
That was in October 2017. And Richard said, do you fancy doing, writing this with me? It's got a big court element to it, big court scene. And I said, yeah, please. I bit both of his hands off.
You absolutely can't go wrong with a court scene. I mean, that's it's always a sort of a fan favorite. So how did it sort of begin with your process from getting the idea? Did you have to speak to the family as a sort of first port of call, or did you try to look into the research side of things?
Yeah, well, most of the research, the groundwork of the research had been done by Nicky Bentham, the producer. So when we went into Pathé, we were meeting with Nicky Bentham of Neon Films and Cameron McCracken. And Nicky had a pile of research materials, including the whole of Kempton's prison memoirs, which were absolutely fascinating because they were written, they were a complete lie. The whole memoir was a complete lie. Well, not a complete lie, because obviously once he got to the events, the mendacity kicked in. But his personal biography and family biography were there, and also his plays. Nicky had 6 or 7 of his plays, and also a lot of family research. So we started there. I didn't meet Chris Bunton until I went to New York. So he works as a IT consultant in New York.
There were also, within the papers that we had, there were some witness statements from the trial. There were some excerpts from the transcript of the trial and other legal papers relating to the case. So that was very, very helpful.
And there's a chapter on the court case in Hutchinson's book, isn't there? The barrister.
Yeah, it's a book about Hutchinson. Yeah, Thomas Grant QC's book, Case Histories, which are the cases that Jeremy Hutchinson appeared in, and that was one of the ones. And obviously, it was one of the things that people, even having seen the film, may not appreciate, is that the trial was so extraordinary that it actually led the government to change the law of theft, because, a quintessential element of theft is that you intend to deprive the other person of whatever property you're alleged to have stolen. And Hutchinson ran this completely audacious defense that there was no intention to deprive, effectively, that he borrowed the painting in order to raise money for charity. Well, if that had become a defense that juries were going to swallow then on a regular basis, then in relation to objects that are on public display in particular, then anyone could basically borrow one for the weekend, as the judge said in his summing up, just to impress the members of the Rotary Club. So they amended in a later act, they created a criminal offence of removing an object from public display to plug the hole that Kempton Bunton had cannonballed through the criminal law.
I mean, it was an extraordinary defense to come out with, and amazing that he was able to convince a jury. But I mean, it sounds like he was the kind of character that was quite able to do that. I mean, how did you try to hone down what the core kind of important story elements were? Because there was a lot of fascinating stuff. I mean, Nicky was saying that there's a lot in that you weren't able to put into the script. So how did you sort of pick and choose what was going to go into the story and making it ready for screen?
Yeah, we started off by doing a treatment, and we took a kind of heist approach, which we were anxious about. We asked for a meeting before we did too much work. And again, Nicky and Cameron said they really didn't want to go down the heist route, which was a really good meeting to have, because we were able to change tack and do more of a kind of family drama and concentrate on the more human aspects.
Yeah.
So that was the first good, correct turning that we did on the road, as it were.
Yeah, I think they were very keen that and I think that they were right, that the family drama was the sort of kind of emotional heart of the film. And it was critical that we corrected ourselves somewhat, and then in discussion with them, realized that. And I think Kempton was already a great character, because, you read 2 or 3 things about Kempton, you realize you've got a fantastic comic creation on your hands. But Dorothy, there was very, very little known about her, really. And even in the documents we received, there was almost nothing. And so that's where we've had to be kind of at our most inventive, I guess. And also, I think they wanted a part kind of fit for a dame, which we tried to create. And eventually a dame said yes, they do.
It up, yeah.
And what a dame!
So did you have to sort of with that character? Did you have to go back to the family, or was there sort of creative license given to you where it was kind of going through the producer side of things? What was the groundwork for that without the information? Because it's an interesting one from a writer's perspective on how you adapt something that isn't there in a true story.
Yeah, that was the stickiest bit of research, really, wasn't it? Because we went back and back, and we found really very little information about Dorothy, apart from that she had an Irish connection. And so we went back and tried to find out if she was Protestant or Catholic, and we couldn't even find that out. It was the Jackie Bunton, who's still alive. I think the family were slightly protecting Jackie, and he didn't want to get too involved in the research and stuff. So he would have been the one who obviously knew all about Dorothy. So we worked from that point of view.
I think we largely
an Irish connection and worked as a cleaner and built it from there. Sorry, Clive.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, those small details we had, I think we, emotionally, we built the character around the fact that, they'd lost their daughter.
Yeah, that was a really powerful storyline, actually.
She was in the after stages, aftermath, whatever, of grief, which had never really been dealt with in those days. Grief wasn't dealt with in the way it's dealt with now. So I think that was a very powerful element. And also, she had this husband who must have been, although charming in many ways, utterly infuriating. So I think those were the sort of kick-off points for
the groundwork. And was it the same for the children and the sort of supporting cast as well?
We knew a bit more. Kenny, with the other brother, we knew was a bit of a bad one. And so that was, that was very helpful.
We knew Jackie had criminal convictions later on, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. But we knew about his boat building. We knew that that was his ambition and that's what he loved doing. In fact, we had this scene at the beginning, which we were really reluctant when Roger Michell said, "Nah, don't need that." But we're going to start the film, we thought, in this incredibly cinematic way with Jackie Bunton leaving at the factory, gets on his motorbike. You don't know where he's going. He drives through, Newcastle down to the banks of the Tyne, down a slip road, gets off his bike, strips down to his underpants, gets into the Tyne and swims across the Tyne to a concrete pontoon in the
middle of the Tyne.
Yeah, which is where he had his boats.
Oh, wow.
That was a fantastic opening. And I think it was just a bit expensive.
Yeah, and we didn't make that up. That Chris Bunton said he used to swim to the middle of the Tyne to work on his boats. Can you imagine that? Roger Michell thought, well, that's going to be a bit difficult.
I mean, it just sounds like this whole family had so many incredible anecdotes, and it's interesting how the sort of the directions. There's not necessarily wrong directions. It's just different directions that make a script so incredibly different. Like moving from the heist into the drama and. How you open the film, it's always a very important thing. So once you sort of got to this research stage, how does your collaboration work in terms of approaching that first draft, for instance, between you?
Standard film technique. We wrote an extensive treatment, maybe 30-page treatment with 100 scenes, and then you shove it in front of the headmaster, Cameron McCracken and Nicky Bentham, and they give notes, you go away, you rewrite it. When everyone's agreed on the treatment, you start the script. And when Clive and I work together, it's great fun. We do a line of dialogue. Clive doesn't like the line of dialogue. He changes it. And then I don't like his line of dialogue and I change it back. And then we have a game of table tennis and there's tears. A fight. And in the end, we've rewritten the line 10 times, and we like to think that's like writing. We all know that writing is rewriting, and we do it in a kind of Vorsprung durch Technik way. So we do it in a kind of structured way, the writing, as it were, line by line.
I mean, we literally write every line together, pretty much.
Right. Okay.
Which is, and we've written plays together where we haven't done that. We've sort of blocked scenes and done them individually and then sent them. But actually, with film, because actually the camera does so much work for you, and relatively speaking, there is so little dialogue compared with the kind of plays that are full of big arias and all that sort of stuff. We've just found it a really effective way to get to a better product quicker by sitting. So, you kind of go through 6 drafts before a word hits the page.
Yeah.
And it's really enjoyable. It's, we basically, apart from the arguing, we do sit around a room, making each other laugh most of the time. And I think, really both people have to have the right of veto. I think there's a sort of exception to that. If someone really is going to die on a hill, Richard's favorite phrase for a line, my get out is, look, if Richard Bean thinks it's funny and he's thought it's funny for the last 3 hours, then it's funny.
Yeah,
because actually, you're wrong about these things. And I think if either of us has an incredibly strong gut instinct that's a great line or it's going to get a great big laugh, then we go with it. One of us gives in even if they have a few misgivings about it. And almost always the person who really believes in it was right.
It's a fascinating way to co-write. Because, I mean, you can kind of divide up scenes or you can work very much together. And it sounds like this is a real sort of collaboration where you're almost pooling the same vision, bouncing it off each other and chipping away at it as it goes.
I mean, really, there are lines most of the lines in this film. Some of the words are Richard and some of the words are mine. We've really worked that closely on the on each line pretty much.
There is also a little bit in our biographies that helps, especially for a film like this, because I do the Northern Losers, don't I? And you do the posh barristers.
Yeah. I've one way or another. Yeah, Richard. I've spent a lot of time as a barrister and as a journalist covering the law, and mixing with a lot of sort of senior lawyers and ministers and whatnot. So I kind of hear those voices in my head the whole time. As Richard, I think
spent a lot of time in bakeries,
sitting on park benches in Hull, picking up bits of dialogue.
So once you got the first draft together, what was the sort of process with the collaboration with the producer, the director, Pathé? Were there many notes? What's your sort of process once you get a draft in terms of evaluation and polishing and how it changes?
Yeah, well, we kind of send it in, and then there's a meeting, and at the meeting there'd be a dramaturg, Nicky Bentham again, and Cameron McCracken again, and we get notes from them. We argue if we feel like arguing, but mostly we take the notes, go away and rewrite, and then another draft goes in. After that stage, the next stage is getting a director on board, which was a little bit trickier and not really our task. Didn't we have a director, Clive, who was a bit disappointed that we hadn't gone down the heist route?
Yeah, we did. I mean, but we one thing to just in relation to what Richard's just said, I do think with this, we got a series of notes, maybe 4 or 5 sets of notes. And actually, every time, Cameron always used to say, were my notes really awful, but actually they were always very good notes, and the script kept on getting better and better. And I think we all knew that. So it was actually an incredibly happy working experience. It isn't always like that. And so that process, I think, went about as quickly as you can go, because, gun to tape, from the first meeting we had with Pathé to the film going into production was under 2.5 years. Which in film terms isn't that long.
No.
And part of that was a hiatus with another director where the film was sort of held up for a while, and then he was not available to do it. So really it was 2 years, actually. Once Roger came on board, Roger became the sort of captain of the ship immediately. And in fact, the first meeting he had with us, he said, "Oh, great script, guys." And we thought, "Oh, great. We'll be in and out of this meeting in 5 minutes." And then he said, "But story starts 30 pages too late."
Right.
So we got our next set of notes.
Yeah. A big set of notes.
Yeah, a big set of notes. And he cut the swimming scene, of course, as well.
Yeah. So how did that kind of front end change once Roger had got on board then?
Scenes that I think we had put in that had, we thought, great kind of family texture. And there was more of Kempton doing stuff in his community, the kind of campaign speaking at a council meeting, that kind of thing. And they got cut. And actually, he was right and we were wrong. I mean, he had that director's eye for the economy of story, of telling a story. And, I don't really miss any of those scenes now.
I slightly miss pavements for pedestrians.
Yeah, that was one of his campaigns.
But we can use that in something else.
So just going back a little bit to how you guys got started in the industry.
We met years and years ago.
Oh, God, yeah.
So in 1991, 92.
91, 92.
Yeah. We were both trying to get going as comedy writers in BBC Radio Light Entertainment.
Right.
And Richard was also doing stand-up at the time. And I just stopped being a barrister. I was teaching barristers which was a job that gave me a lot of spare time to write. And I was writing, I got on a scheme that Radio Light Entertainment had called the Contract Writers Scheme, where you kind of put on the staff for a year and you write for, shows like Weekending and the News Headlines. And Richard was also writing for Weekending. And a producer called Colin Swash, who went on to produce Have I Got News for You and be its chief writer for many years, he wanted to do a sketch show, and he put the two of us together.
Right.
We brought in another friend of ours called Andy Clifford, and we did 2 series of a show called Control Group 6.
And how did those kind of early jobs inform your writing process? Did you start by just learning other people, or did you go through the sort of the writing process yourself? Just interested in how you got started, really.
It's funny, isn't it? Because the sketches, you tended to write the sketches for Control Group 6 with Andy a bit more, and I was writing on my own more, wasn't I? And then when we got together, we fine-tuned all the sketches and stuff. But once Control Group 6 was over and I was sick of doing stand-up, I started writing theatre. So I've had a career as a playwright, I guess you would say. You went on to write Chambers, the sitcom for television, didn't you?
Yeah, I wrote a sitcom. Was on radio for 3 series on Radio 4, and then it did two on telly. It was just, I was a barrister, and that's what I knew about. And I always seen barristers as being, inspired the sort of seeming grandeur of the courtroom as sort of venal and avaricious and desperate and sweaty as anyone else. So that was kind of what Chambers was about, the most venal, avaricious, lazy, duplicitous barrister in the world, played by John Bird, who you always quite like because the system was often a bit worse than he was. I did that, and then that went to telly, did 2 series on telly, and then it wasn't recommissioned. It was a bit like falling off a cliff. And I wrote for the Bill. I did a bit of drama writing, and then I had 3 big projects, all of which looked like absolute certs for telly. One big one with Dawn French for Tiger Aspect, and sitting in a room for a long time, ripping my hair out, producing these things. And for various reasons, none of them happened. And I sort of slightly thought my writing days were behind me. I then happened into journalism and I was presenting a program on Radio 4, and then I became the legal correspondent. And in 2013, Richard was taken out for a beer, I think by Kelvin Mackenzie, who wanted him to write a Jerry Springer the Opera, Rupert Murdoch the Musical. Right. And I was very heavily involved covering the phone hacking scandal at that point. And we got talking. And I said, no, this is just a massive national scandal. And Richard had a big commission at the National outstanding and sort of said, well, why don't you come along and have a meeting with Nick Heitner? And we went to that meeting, and I knew a lot about that story. And it was an extraordinary story about our culture and our national character and how we pride ourselves on that Great Britain's this country with this kind of gold standard of integrity that runs through all its institutions, and how phone hacking was kind of ramming that hypocrisy down everyone's throat. And we spoke to Nick Heitner for about an hour, and he just said, fine, go start writing it. So
that was the first time we got back together writing after 30 years, isn't it? So you'd done your sitcoms and whatever and journalism. Yeah. I'd written 28 stage plays.
I mean, it's a sort of a fascinating story, really, and it kind of shows that the people. I mean, at the moment, you're writing a top, film that's sort of out on the circuit, and even you guys have been through moments when you've taken sort of side routes in your careers, and you've had time going into different things. So it's all kind of life experience, isn't it?
Yeah, I think I've written 3 film scripts and been commissioned to write film scripts. 3 that haven't been good enough to be made. Which is part. I wrote those on my own, and I think that's part of the reason why me and Clive writing together is a good thing, because each other's faults. Can I put it that way? Each other's faults, and what's the word?
Collectively a strength.
Yeah. We can spot them and sandpaper the edges a bit.
I also think actually, Richard had been writing plays on his own in a shed for 20 years, and I think he was going a bit bonkers and actually just needed some company. And I was lucky I was there at the time. I think I got, in all fairness, I think I got Richard at a great time, and I think he got me at quite a good time because I'd done 10 years as the BBC legal correspondent, and
you're also going mad.
Slightly going mad.
Collectively mad genius.
Yeah, 5 a.m. for the Today programme. Boy, was I not sad to see the end of those. But it had taken me to so many interesting areas of society, the law, nationally and internationally. And so there was a lot of, in fact, one of the projects we're just about to kick off on was one that really comes from coverage that I did of, as news stories, which we're now turning into drama. So I think we could just, sometimes things, you just cross paths at the right time. And I think we did.
Yeah. And it's all very, very varied and valuable experience that obviously is fed into this perfectly to align at just the right time.
There's a lot of living that we've both done that we can feed into. It's all, there's plenty of anecdotes in the room, aren't there?
Yeah.
And did you always know that you were kind of aiming for film? I mean, you obviously sort of went through theatre and TV. Was there a sort of a clear goal there, or was it just as life threw you in those directions?
I really enjoyed writing the 2 plays, we've done, but I was really fascinated by writing for the screen. And, when back in the day when I was writing gags for, I was reading kind of voraciously about, all the William Goldman books and Sid Field and all that sort of stuff. And I just I always felt that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to, I write dialogue, but in a narrative form where the camera is doing a lot of work for you. And I was a great movie buff as well. Whereas I think Richard's, his writing was rooted in theatre. And, and obviously he's done 30 odd plays. So we were coming at it from, I think, slightly different perspectives. Is that fair, Richard?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely fair. And I think one of my skills as a playwright is I pride myself on thinking I know exactly where the audience is at any given moment and what they're thinking, what they're feeling. And I find that a bit more difficult with film because the audience in film it's not necessarily a collective experience. When I go to the cinema, I'm quite pleased when I'm on my own in a full row of empty seats. If that was the theatre, I'd be very disappointed and wondering why am I here and no one else is here? Is there something about this play that no one's told me? So, and it's just how many years I've been writing theatre, 1999, what was it now? 21, 22 years I've been writing theatre, and I feel as if I know where the audience is, and I don't know that with film. And
the other thing that Rich is probably sick of me kind of expounding my great theory of film, but I can do it in a couple of sentences. But basically, put simply, it's that people don't go to the cinema thinking that what they want is a really rigorous intellectual workout. But the fact is that is exactly what they want. And, that's why you're giving them minimal amounts of information often, because you're generating, their imaginations to make connections and to, and that's probably also slightly different with theatre. Not that there isn't, of course, suspense and hidden knowledge in theatre, but in film it's particularly the case. And, so we're constantly, or maybe me more than Richard, saying, no, let's take that out, because, you never tell the story in a linear way. You're constantly taking information out that the audience then has to fill in for.
It's leaving just the right gap, isn't it?
Yeah,
exactly. That's been an absolutely fascinating chat. Just one last question for both of you, as short as possible. If you had any advice for young writers starting out, or you as a young writer looking back on your career in terms of getting started,
I would say don't write what you think is fashionable or whatever, but write the play or write the film that you want to see.
And I'd say keep turning up, just keep going. Because I thought my writing career was over several times, and guess what? Well, hopefully it isn't.
No, and now you've got a poster with some nice stars on the back behind you. So I think that's proof's in the pudding. Again, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you both for your time, and we'll look forward to getting it out to the audiences.
Yeah, brilliant.
Thanks,
Lovely.
Tom. Cheers.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much for listening. You are amazing. And if you're lucky enough to rise up and do well, it is your duty to send the elevator back down. We will see you next Tuesday. As always, take care. Go out there and make your film. Bye-bye. Under the covers, under the boardwalk, down by the sea, I'm with a filmmaker named Dom Lemoir, and he likes to be under the boardwalk, down by the sea. Yeah.
Can we start now?
We hope you liked today's episode. If you want to hear more, visit our Patreon for bonus clips and exclusive content.